After winning the Squid Game in Season 1, Gi-hun, now a multi-millionaire, thought the cash would give him a fresh start at life. Instead, victory brought him little peace. Despite walking away with millions of dollars, Gi-hun is haunted by the horrors he witnessed during the game, like the deaths of his fellow contestants and closest friends. The brutal memories of the friends he lost weigh heavily on him, and he can't shake the guilt of having survived when so many others perished horribly. Gi-hun decides that he should leave this old life behind and prepares to board a flight to see his daughter in America. Just as he's about to go, he spots the same subway recruiter who introduced him to the Squid Game, luring another poor soul. Go-han snatches the business card from the new victim, calls the phone number, and is told to get on his plane if he knows what's good for him.
456번. 허튼 생각하지 마. 그래서 난 그 비행기를 타. 그게 당신한테 좋을 거야.
Taking this as a threat, suspicious that he's being watched, Gi-hun turns around at the gate and searches himself for some kind of tracking device, which he found behind his ear. Jun-ho, a police officer who investigated the mysterious Squid Game Island in Season 1, wakes up in hospital after being shot in an attempt to expose the cruel games. 2 years following this, he chose to move to the traffic division in order to get a quieter and more relaxing life. His former chief invited him to a meal one day, asking him to return to the major crimes division. But Jun-ho was upset that the unit had failed to track down any information on the island and organization, closing the case. Late at night, Gi-hun hears his doorbell ringing, but nobody shows up on the cameras he set up for his protection. Opening the door, he's shocked to see the Big Daddy frontman standing in front of him, holding the severed heads of 2 of Gi-hun's friends. Gojo Trigger fingered his Glock trying to kill his rival, but woke up realizing it was just a nightmare.
누구야? 456번.
Then he heard the doorbell go again, for real this time. Thankfully, instead of the Squid Game staff, it's just his private investigator, Mr. Kim. Since 2 years ago when he left the games, Gi-hun has been paying the PI to track down the mysterious recruiter from the subway, but he always slipped away. This year, Goku pays a lot extra so that every subway line can be watched by additional men, which leads to the recruiter being spotted. Speeding to meet the men who are tailing the recruiter, Gi-hun gets stopped by a traffic patrol and receives a ticket. Little did he know, Jun-ho was one of these officers and he recognized Gi-hun, researching his rental car's company since he was suspicious. Mr. Kim and his teammate thought the recruiter was about to escape, so they tried to stop him but were both beaten up, taking them hostage to play a deadly game of Russian roulette which resulted in the death of Mr. Kim.
아이고. 하나를 못 빼셨네요.
While this happened, Jun-ho traced the car to belonging to Mr. Kim's company, so he broke into his office and discovered the secret investigation into the Squid Games. He found the location of Gi-hun's hideout and started to drive there. Gi-hun returned home after being unable to find Mr. Kim and his men, only to discover the recruiter standing in front of him, forcing him to play Russian roulette. This guy really had a thing for Russia. But Gi-hun agrees, and even though the recruiter had realized he would die in the game, his ego was too high to break the rules of the game, which he followed so strictly that he even killed his own father.
딱지치기도 제대로 못하는 인간이었는데. 왜? 생각이 많아졌나? 개새끼라는 걸.
As he self-eliminated, Jun-ho arrived at the motel, coming across Choi Woo-seok, the partner who was with Mr. Kim, and asked him for Gi-hun's room number. After he entered the room and saw the body of the recruiter, Jun-ho tried to arrest G-Money but got jumped by Woo-seok.
경찰이다. 손 머리 위로 올려. 강기현, 당신을 살인 용의자로 체포한다. 권리가 있고 묵비권을 행사.
Who explained the situation in detail. Gi-hun finds an invitation card on the recruiter's body, just like the one he received 2 years ago. He then questions Jun-ho, who tells him about his investigation to find out about his brother, infiltrating the Squid Game staff, but doesn't tell him about his brother. Go-han tells In-ho that if he quits the police force, he can join him in searching for the Big Daddy frontman. Although Gi-hun had kept him promised to take care of Se-byuk's younger brother, her mother was still at a North Korean camp, so G-Money gave a fat stack of cash to an agent to find and take care of her. As he leaves, a woman called No Eul enters, seeking her 1-year-old daughter who had left her in North Korea after fleeing to the South. We're then shown part of her day-to-day life working as a mascot at an amusement park, where a little girl with blood cancer approaches her and gives her a drawing she made. At night, she's sleeping in her car when a mysterious figure knocks in the darkness and hands her one of the Squid Game cards. How creepy. The next day at work, she hands in her resignation, but on her way out, she sees the father of the young girl running to an ambulance where his daughter lies unconscious. The father dropped her hat in his rush, so No-Yul picked it up and followed them to the hospital. We then find out that Goku is getting one of his teeth replaced with a false one, which stores a tracking chip, which will allow the group to monitor and track him wherever he goes. He'd even gone to the effort of training a private militia, led by a veteran with a lot of combat experience. He tries to call his daughter, but finds himself unable to speak, and in the meantime, No-Yul calls the number on her invitation and burns it after joining the organization, alongside the drawing the little girl gifted her. Gi-hun decides to take Choi with him to the club that the invitation card listed, but when they got there, they were separated, and pink guards took Gi-hun away in a limousine. The group tried to follow him, but guards were on rooftops and sniped out their wheels, showing how prepared the organizers for the Squid Games truly are.
지금 바로 리무진 멈추세요. 알겠습니다. 작전 시작하겠습니다.
Gi-hun decides to enter the games again, saying that the VIPs would love for an experienced player to come back and shake things up. This leads to gas being released, and while Gi-hun is transported to the mysterious Squid Game island, we see No-Yul enter a trailer where she has a private room to get dressed. Instead of a green jumpsuit like the players, however, we see her put on the infamous pink outfit with the black mask, representing her status as a guard. Gi-hun woke up in a huge dorm with rows of metal bunk beds, just like Season 1. Still groggy from the gas, which knocked him out. He saw people in those classic green uniforms around him, all looking anxious and confused. Guards stood at the edges of the room. A voice announced that there would be 6 different games, played over 6 days, with a giant cash prize for the final winner. Anybody who wanted to quit could vote after each round, but the money in the pot would grow every time a player was eliminated.
지금 보시는 것은 여러분의 소중한 상금을 담을 돼지 저금통입니다. 저 돼지 저금통에 상금이 적립됩니다.
Gi-hun recognized that eliminated meant shot to death, but many others didn't believe it was possible. He noticed a few faces that stood from the crowd. One woman wearing the number 222 was pregnant. Another player, 246, had mentioned his daughter was in the hospital with blood cancer and he needed money for her treatment. Sound familiar? A middle-aged man, 007, looked nervous about his mother, who was also there as a player to pay off his debts. A YouTuber named MG Coin was being harassed by player 230, named Thanos, and another player, 124, who blamed him for bad investment advice that lost them their savings.
MG 코인? 진기명기? 맞아?
넌 날 몰라도 난 널 알고 있지. 내가 네 방송 구독자거든. 너 때문에 수업 깨졌다 이 개새끼야.
나도야.
밤이고 낮이고 하도 네 방송을 잡아서 꿈에도 네가 나와 이 씨발놈아. 어쩌긴 갚아야지. 안 사면 병신이라며 이 개새끼야!
형, 참아. 알았어. 앨범 내야 돼.
Many of them asked Gi-hun questions about why he seemed so certain these games would be dangerous. He tried to warn everyone, saying he had seen these dorms before and knew what would follow. Some listened. Others doubted him and thought he was crazy. While all of this was happening, Gi-hun had secretly realized that the tracking chip he installed was missing, and we see Junho's group find it with a fisherman far away from the island.
아저씨, 뭐 하시는 거예요? 아저씨, 왜 그러세요?
멋있어.
왜 그래 뭐하냐? 오!
Their backup plan had completely failed, and now G-Money would be on his own, with nobody to help him. He'd need to try to bring an end to the games by himself. Their first game was Red Light, Green Light. The huge, creepy doll from Season 1 had some new upgrades. Goku had been through this game before, so he told everyone to stay completely still when the doll spoke. Not everyone believed him, and soon enough, a woman, player 196, got frightened by a bee mid-round, flinched, and was gunned down in cold blood. More people panicked and tried to run, which made the gunfire even worse.
네가 꽂힌 거 하나 봐. 너한테 벌이 앉았어.
다 움직였어.
One of the snipers killing the contestants ends up being No Yul, who recognizes a player as being the father of the sick girl. By the time the round ended, bodies lay scattered across the field. The survivors were sent back to the dorm, their faces pale after realizing that Gi-hun was completely right all along. On a giant display above the bunks, the guards showed the growing total of prize money. Dozens of people had died, so the amount spiked higher than earlier. Gi-hun demanded a vote to stop the game, but most players couldn't ignore the sum of money now on the table. Many of them chose to continue, convinced they might figure out a way to survive. This brought the vote to a tie, and it was down to a single player to decide everybody's future. Player 001 stepped forward, and it's here we see that it's actually Inho, Junho's brother. He votes to continue the games, since his entire intention behind being there is just to sabotage Gi-hun's plans, since he knew he would try to mess with the games. After a night of restless sleep, everyone was led to the second game. It was different from the one Gi-hun remembered from the previous tournament. This time, each group had to have 5 players. Some older or weaker participants were shunned away from the rest, not wanting to risk having a weaker team. Player 007 and his mother had trouble finding teammates because of this. Gi-hun let player 222, the pregnant woman, join him since people were avoiding her, along with a couple of others he thought he could trust. The guards tied each team's ankles together with a rope and explained that they had to pass through 5 mini-games as a chain. These mini-games were simple children's pastimes. Dakji, where you flip a folded paper tile by slamming another tile onto it. Flying Stone, where you throw a stone to knock another stone off its spot. Gongi, which was like playing jacks with pebbles. Spinning Top, where you had to spin a top on the ground. And Jeggi, a quick test of keeping a small shuttlecock in the air with your foot. These would probably be pretty fun or interesting games if your lives weren't on the line when you played them. Each member of the team had to complete one part in sequence, and the entire group had to cross a finish line within 5 minutes. Failure would lead to an entire group elimination. Everything depended on speed and precision. Gi-hun's team began well. Player 222 did Dakji in one try, which was awesome. Another teammate took 2 attempts to succeed at Flying Stone. Gongi went quickly, but Spinning Top took several tries, burning up precious seconds. Gi-hun tackled the Jeggi portion last, carefully kicking the shuttlecock up once, then rushing forward. The clock was about to run out when they finally crossed the line, way too close for comfort. Gunfire from the far side of the arena told them that many other teams had failed and were being disqualified. When the survivors returned to the dorm, they saw the pot of prize money jump way higher again. More players began to grasp the seriousness of the situation after barely making it through that crazy challenge.
게임에서 총 110명이 탈락하여 201억. 남아있는 참가자.
Yet another vote to stop the game still didn't pass, because most people felt they could do better if they stayed calm, since they made it through 2 games already. Gi-hun was upset, but no one on the pro game side listened to his warning that these games would only get worse. The third challenge took place in an enclosed arena with a giant rotating platform. The loudspeaker instructed everyone to stand on it. It would spin, then stop, and a voice would announce a number. Players had 30 seconds to form groups of that exact size and enter one of the rooms around the platform. Anyone left out when time ran out would be shot, and so would anyone inside a room with the wrong number of people. It started with a high number, so players scrambled to gather large groups. Some forcibly pulled in strangers to fill their needs. A few were left behind, begging for help while banging on closed doors until the buzzer sounded and the guns fired.
10명.
빨리 가야 돼. 시간 없어요, 기훈 씨. 여기 한 명만. 들어가.
The platform spun a second time, calling a smaller number. Teams who stuck together were suddenly forced to break up. Gi-hun saw player 007's mother nearly get trapped alone, but he and another player yanked her in at the last second to keep her safe. More shots rang out, and by the end of that round, the group of participants had shrunk again. The dorm felt way emptier than before, and the mood changed drastically. At this point, tensions rose to an all-time high. Players shouted at each other or tried to bully weaker ones into giving them food. Thanos and his friend player 124 kept swallowing illegal pills to steady their nerves from how insane and anxiety-raising the games were. They threatened MG Coin, blaming him for their debts and hardships. Gojo overheard arguments between a transgender player 120 and some others who shunned her. One night, players decided to hold another vote since many of them felt that it had gone too far and wasn't worth it to let people die. Those who wanted out of the games tried to convince others to join them. Another group insisted on continuing, threatening to kill anyone who spoiled their chance for big money, which would give them freedom. When the lights went out, a riot erupted. People with forks or sharpened sticks attacked sleeping players, hoping to reduce the head count. Gi-hun yelled for everyone near him to hide under bunks or push them together. A bloody fight broke out, with screams and shadows moving in the dark. Eventually, the pink-suited guards rushed in to restore control. Gi-hun and a few allies had planned to use that moment to fight back, taking weapons from the guards and starting an uprising. They started to charge deeper into the facility, trying to find whoever was controlling everything so that they could forcibly put an end to the games and free all of the players. They used radios to contact Inho, who was pretending to be on their side, asking him to bring ammunition. G-Money's group got as far as the staircase, cutting down some of the guards who fired back, but there were more staff members than they had bullets. One of the friends ran out of ammo and froze in fear. Another yelled for help over the radio. Inho answered, saying he was pinned down and had no way to reach them. Gi-hun held on to hope that they might outflank the guards and get the better of them. Suddenly, two of his teammates were shot from behind by someone they never saw coming. Over the radio, he heard staged gunfire as if Inho was getting killed too. But then the real twist appeared. The person who shot Gi-hun's allies was Inho himself. Who when left to don his gray hood and a black mask as the frontman. The guards trapped Gi-hun and the few survivors left around him, killing them one by one. Inho stepped forward, and one of Gi-hun's closest friends was singled out and executed on the spot to set an example. Gi-hun screamed as the front daddy fired his weapon, and his voice echoed in the hall, telling him this rebellion was over and that he had failed. Guards disarmed and contained Ney survivors, and the entire dorm was placed back under lockdown. As Gi-hun dropped to his knees, he knew he was closer than ever to being stuck in the final rounds of a game that no one seemed able to stop. The same cycle repeated itself. New players drawn by debt and despair, lethal games disguised as simple childhood pastimes, and masked masterminds who treated them like disposable pawns. Goku had returned, hoping to bring it all down, but instead, he found that the operation was much more sophisticated, with hidden loyalties and a frontman who had already seen his every move coming. The pot of prize money had ballooned beyond imagination, but every coin was stained by the blood of fallen players. And the next games were still waiting, with nobody sure what could be planned. And that's exactly where Squid Game Season 3 will pick up from. Fans have set the internet on fire with theories about what will happen to Gi-hun and the front daddy, which games will be played, and even some players who might not be dead after all. Press the cards on screen to check those videos out, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you again soon for more Squid Game content.